I'm Christian Fraser, and this is The Context.
You're going to see the British doing pageant and the British do pageant like nobody else. So what you will see, frankly, will be jaw-dropping.
William looks very handsome, but Catherine is so much prettier in real life than what when you see her on the TV.
To get a good view, because if you're going to come, you want to be on the front row, don't you, really? I'm sure Charles will be looking out for us.
Our history and heritage comes to life if you come to Britain, but you have to come to Britain to experience it.
A very good evening. Welcome to the programme. We are at Buckingham Palace tonight ahead of the big event on Saturday, the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla. We have a packed programme for you tonight. We'll be looking ahead to the most ancient of ceremonies at Westminster Abbey in the company of two people who were there in 1953. In fact, one of our guests even sang at the christening of the King in 1948. We have TV royalty on standby as well. Caddy Kay is down at the Abbey for us tonight, where things are almost ready, just the last touches, the last rehearsals, with nothing left to chance on a big occasion like this. We'll talk about what the coronation is and what it isn't, the role the King has played in the preparations, and how the people, the Commonwealth and the different faiths will be included. And then at 9, the Royal Watchers will be here. Robert Hardman and Christine Ross joining us ahead of the big occasion on Saturday, both of them taking part in the BBC's coverage. But let us begin with what the royals have been doing today. You might just be able to pick up behind me the royal standard, which is on top of the palace, fluttering in the evening breeze, which tells you that the King is in residence at Buckingham Palace. And earlier today, he went down to the Abbey for a walk-through rehearsal, and then he returned to the palace where he's been receiving visitors this afternoon. And this is the picture that really stands out. This is Ayunca Domingo Pease, and he is the chief of the Amazon tribes. He's flown here all the way from Ecuador to present the King with a headdress, a crown of rainforest feathers. It's the highest honour that they can bestow, and that marks the commitment that the King has shown throughout his life to the environment, and particularly, of course, the preservation of the Amazonian rainforests. Meanwhile, the Prince and Princess of Wales took the new Elizabeth line, the tube, down to Soho in central London and went to the pub. And they paid a visit to the Dog and Duck. Here they are walking down Old Compton Street. This is one of the oldest pubs in town, in support of the hospitality industry, which has had such a torrid time of late. While he was there, the Prince spent some time pulling a pint, getting a feel for it. In fact, the pint that he pulled was a pint of Kingmaker. It's the first time the brewery have put that on tap, and that was the first pint that they had poured. In open jacket. Open shirt, a sharp contrast to the pomp and the formality that we will see on Saturday, of course, and the role that the Duke will be playing within it. And there is the pint that he's pouring. And then, of course, he promptly put that down and had a pint of cider. So let's hear from someone who has spent many years working closely with the late Queen Elizabeth. He is the former Buckingham Palace Press Secretary, Charles Anson. Charles, lovely to see you again. You spent so much time in that building behind us in the royal household. This is a momentous occasion, and a historic occasion. What will the mood be like among the royal staff right now? We're going to talk about that. Charles, I know you're going to stay with us through the evening. Good to talk to you. For the moment, thank you very much. In fact, let's talk about that, because Caddy's down at the Abbey, and Caddy's just come back from a trip around Europe, talking to some of these other royal families. What do they make of what we're going to put on here in the UK this weekend, Caddy?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? No one else, no other royal family, and there are a dozen of them in Europe, have a coronation ceremony, anything like this one. They've done away with theirs, and they've done away, really, with a lot of the grandeur and the pomp and the circumstance that goes with the British royal family. It's partly what makes the British royal family interesting globally, but it's probably also what opens it up to the kind of scrutiny that this coronation is getting, where people are saying, as you were suggesting there, Christian, there's a cost of living crisis. There are sirens going on behind me. Is this actually what the British public wants? So I don't know that you can compare the British royal family, but I suspect, and lots of royal watchers are saying, that actually the British royal family is perhaps heading a little bit more in the direction of those European ones. There's somebody with me, Angela Levin, who is a royal expert, writer, and author of the most recent book, Camilla from Outcast to Queen Consort, who's joined me here. I mean, that purpose of the coronation, Angela, other European families have done away with it. Is it very important to the British royal family to have this coronation ceremony with all its opulence and grandeur? And Angela Levin, thank you very much for joining us. I loved your description there of the anointing process, because it really is quite a medieval process, Christian. When you hear descriptions like that from Angela, you realise just how far this dates back, and how some countries, hearing that this oil comes partly from Greece and partly from just outside Jerusalem, and he's dressed in a sort of simple robe and he changes his clothes 4 times. I mean, it sounds almost made for cinema, not part of the real world. And I guess that's part of the fact that why there are so many tourists and people watching this, why it will have millions of viewers, because it's slightly surreal.
Yes. Cathy sent me copious notes ahead of this ceremony, and one of them tells me that St Edward's crown, which is one of 3 crowns that will be worn this weekend, is 2.2 kilos. And I couldn't just work out how heavy that was, so my wife caught me this morning with 2 bags of flour on my head, just seeing what that felt like, actually, and why you had to change crowns halfway through the procession. But there we are.
Can I just say one thing? I one-upped you, Christian, because I didn't just put 2 bags of flour on my head. In preparation for this, I tried on a crown recently. It's incredibly uncomfortable.
Well, there you are. You see, Cathy mixes with royalty. I don't.
There you go.
That's why she's got the best seat in the house. But my scene is not bad here. I want to just show you around. We've had such a wonderful day here. The sun has been out. The bunting is out. You'll see there's plenty of people still milling around. Here we have, of course, Victoria's Memorial. You'll see the camera positions are there. Underneath those black covers, protection from the rain, which we're expecting over the next 2 days. And then just over here to the left, this grand amphitheatre where the veterans and the NHS workers will sit. They'll have the best view in the house come Saturday morning, 10:20, when the state coach leaves the palace gates. Just the top of the mall there's about 60 or 80 people who've already pitched their tents. They're in prime position, but others casing out where they might stand on Saturday. And then just in the foreground here, look at the gorgeous tulips. These are king blood tulips, which were planted just before the late Queen died, and they've come into bloom, standing to attention at just the right time, looking absolutely glorious underneath the moon, which has just come up, I can see over there. We're going to go to a short break around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News. For our viewers here in the UK, let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. Ukraine's President Zelensky says Russia's President Putin should be sentenced for his criminal actions in Ukraine. He was speaking to the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Earlier, Moscow had accused the US and Ukraine of attempting to assassinate the Russian leader in an alleged drone attack on the Kremlin. That's been denied by Kyiv and Washington. A driver who ploughed into a crowd in the West Midlands, killing a student last autumn, has been convicted of murder. Stephen McHugh, who did not have a driving licence, admitted drinking and taking drugs before getting behind the wheel. 22-year-old Rebecca Steer died in hospital after the crash in Oswestry. The polls are open. In local elections across England, voters are deciding who runs services in 230 local councils, with about 8,000 seats at stake. 4 mayoral posts are also being contested. For the first time in England, voters need to show a valid photo ID before casting their ballot. You're live with BBC News. We're at Buckingham Palace this evening, and we have 2 very special guests with us this evening who both sang at the 1953 coronation. Martin Neary, who was a young boy back then in the Chapel Royal choristers. Nice to see you, Martin. He went on to become Master of Choristers at Westminster Abbey, and in 1997 he wrote the music for Diana, the Princess of Wales's funeral. Also with us, to his left, James Wilkinson, who for 25 years was the science correspondent for the BBC, part of this parish. He was also a chorister for Westminster School in 1953, and now is one of Westminster Abbey's honorary stewards. So ahead of such a historic occasion, we have a piece of history with us in the 2 of you. Welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Martin, tell me what you remember, because there'll be some young boys who are going to sit in the choir at Westminster Abbey this weekend, full of nerves, no doubt. What do you remember ahead of the Queen's coronation? Rationing, of course. So loo rolls were very valuable at the time. Listen, we're going to go to a short break. You're going to hang around. I want to talk about the music because, of course, a coronation is nothing without the fabulous music that we're going to hear. And there are 12 new pieces, I think, that have been written for this coronation. So we'll talk about that and your expertise on the Abbey as well, because you're an honorary steward at the Abbey. There's lots more to come. Do stay with us. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
When the weather can't make up its mind, we can help you make up yours. Check on the BBC Weather app.
Hello, I'm Christian Fraser. You're watching The Context on BBC News. A royal visit in Soho. The Prince and Princess of Wales out and about today at a pub in central London, an impromptu walkabout that drew huge crowds ahead of Saturday's coronation.
I waited over here for about half an hour and I said hi to William and he asked me how I was and I said I'm good, thank you, and he said he was well, and here we are.
Welcome back to Buckingham Palace ahead of the big event on Saturday, the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Let's talk to Cathy Kay, who is down at Westminster Abbey. We were talking with Charles Anson a little earlier in the programme, Cathy, about how people will respond to the coronation on Saturday and how the King, I get used to calling him King Charles these days, how the King has adapted it to make it appeal to more people. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that he's included people from different faiths is already a big deal. For the first time, you're going to have leaders who represent the Jewish faith, the Hindu faith, the Muslim faith, who are all going to be having some kind of a role. Well, of course, that didn't happen in 1953 with Camilla. There's this, with Queen Elizabeth, there's this appeal to the public rather than the peers. We were hearing earlier today how it's not the 40 peers of the realm who will come and kneel before him to pledge their allegiance, but the British public has been asked, all of them at home, to pledge their own allegiance. Let's see how that actually pans out. But it is part of this gesture to making the British monarchy less kind of closed behind the Buckingham Palace gates and more accessible to the public. I think that's, some of what you saw today. I mean, it's a pretty blatant attempt, wasn't it, of being man and woman of the people by taking the tube when we saw William and Catherine go down to Soho and pull a pint at the pub. I mean, it's the sort of ultimate British part of the public thing to do, and I think that all of that is part of this gesture of perhaps making this monarchy a little bit more like some of those European monarchies that are sort of more accessible and less grand.
Yeah, actually, at the palace we've got the Outriders, the Royal Outriders, just tearing past us, going past Victoria Monument. Caddy, let's just talk about the homage of the people. I looked at the way it is in the United States and the allegiance that people pledge in the United States, and that's to the flag. It's to an inanimate object, and here we have the people pledging their allegiance to a sovereign. Do you think a lot of people will have a problem with that? I mean, obviously, people who become British citizens, they do that as a matter of course in town halls around the country, but it's not something the British people think about, who they're pledging their allegiance to, as a matter of course, is it?
Look, I imagine that you'll get what we see reflected in the polls, that you will get older Britons who are in favour of the monarchy, who might want to take part in some way, although perhaps, to be honest, sitting on your sofa saying God save the King might feel a little awkward, and who knows how many people will actually do it. We don't have cameras in everybody's homes, so to be honest, we don't know how many people are actually going to do it. But I imagine younger people who are starting to express some disinterest or more than that for the royal family might say, no, I mean, this is not, I don't see why I should be subject to any one person, and that might be, you know, part of the antipathy that they feel towards monarchy. I mean, it'll be interesting, you know, I wish we could poll how that goes, because I think it's almost an interesting test. But also the other thing that's interesting about those polls is that throughout history, since the polling has been done, it has shown that as people grow older in this country, they grow more in favour of monarchy. So it could just be that the process of aging makes us more aware of legacy, history, more attached to traditions than we are when we're younger, which would be, let's face it, the perfectly normal course of events.
You've been touring these European royal families and putting some focus on the spare, the royal who's not in direct line to the throne. And of course there's a lot of focus, and there will be a lot of focus this weekend on Harry, on the Duke of Sussex. Today we've seen Harry and Meghan on the streets, not the real Harry and Meghan, I should hasten to add. There are people. This is a bumper time, Caddy, isn't it, for those who impersonate the royals? Yeah, I think so. I think there's been a shift in the atmosphere today as people start to get ready for it and the preparations go on around them. Christine, you have fun out there on the Mall. Wrap up warm tonight. The weather, I believe, is due to turn a little inclement over the next few days, so you're going to need your umbrella and your Mac.
Yeah.
But best of luck. Best of luck with it. Christine there from Staffordshire. We're going to take a short break. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
Yorkshire traditions, the hills, the ramblers, and now apparently the alpacas?
We started off with just a load of rescue animals, and then one day I saw a couple of alpacas for sale on Facebook that had done trekking before, and thought, wow, we're in the best location for it, so why not have a go, see what happens?
Making up the two-legged contingent of this caravan across Baildon Moor, students from Bradford College.
It's fun, it's a nice exercise, and it's a good experience.
Yes, I was nervous because I wasn't around alpacas, but now that I've got used to him, he's lovely.
The family firm who run the walks also take the animals into care homes. It's not hard to see why. The alpacas are instantly friendly company. It was only an hour's stroll, but that was plenty of time for these students, some of whom have their own challenges to face, making memories to last a lifetime.
You're watching BBC News. We're live at Buckingham Palace. We'll have more on the coronation very shortly, but I want to turn briefly to some of the day's other news, and particularly this story out of Washington today. 4 members of the far-right group, the Proud Boys, guilty of seditious conspiracy for plotting the attack on the US Capitol in January 2021. Those convicted include the group's ex-leader, Enrique Tarrio. The convictions follow a trial lasting nearly 4 months as the US Justice Department pursues criminal charges against more than 1,000 people arising from the Capitol attack by supporters of then-President Donald Trump. Let's speak to my colleague Nomia Iqbal, who's been watching this in Washington for seditious conspiracy. Explain to us, Nomia, what that is. Nomia, good to see you. Thank you for that update from Washington. So 4 people found guilty of seditious conspiracy there in a very important trial that we've been following. Let's bring in our special guests who are with me tonight. James Wilkinson, who was a member of the Westminster School Choir in 1953, sang in the Abbey at the Queen's Coronation, and standing next to him, Martin Neary, who was then a member of the Chapel Royal Choir and went on for 10 years to lead the Abbey Choir. So I want to talk about the music, because of course a coronation would not be a coronation without the music. 12 new pieces to be composed this weekend. What do you see in the music that King Charles has commissioned?
And I think you just pray for your lucky stars.
Where will you watch it on Saturday?
I'll be at home watching it on television. And at home.
Out at home. With your own memories, no doubt.
Yes.
Very special memories that you brought to us on the programme this evening. James Wilson, Martin Neary, thank you so much for being with us and for joining us. We, of course, will be here for the next hour. Our panel will be joining us. Christina Ross and James Hardman will be here. Robert Hardman, I should say, will be here in the next hour. We'll get their thoughts on what promises to be a very special weekend.
Are you a raver? Do I look like a raver?
I've got bass in a backpack. This is amazing.
Dancing for like 4 or 5 hours of a gig, you could generate about 800 kilowatt hours of thermal energy. So that's a lot of energy.
Right, so shall we give it a taste then? It's my favourite.
We're really talking to the plants and they're telling us how happy they are.
It can fly, but it can also float on water.
The bots kick off with some swift striking.
Oh my god, that came by quick.
It's all about augmented reality.
Useful, then. Useful.
I scroll through the options with my finger here. Solar system, let's give that one a go. Totally and utterly immersed in another world there.
We've got to consider all of these things if we're going to avoid an apocalyptic fate. But also excited.
The police have found us. I can't believe I'm now wanting to run away from the police. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Your Tech Update. Click, watch on BBC iPlayer.
Hello, I'm Christian Fraser. This is The Context.
This huge ceremony that has taken place for over 1,000 years and represents continuity over that whole time.
This was a piece of history, and the thrill of the vivats as the Westminster scholars shouted out from the top story was something you'll never forget. You felt you were part of history.
William looks very handsome, but Catherine is so much prettier in real life than what they, when you see her on the TV.
To get a good view, because if you're going to come, you want to be on the front row, don't you, really? I'm sure Charles will be looking out for us.
Welcome back to the programme. We are at Canada Gate this evening outside Buckingham Palace, where the royal standard is fluttering. The stands are built. They're ready for the coronation this Saturday of King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Light duties for the royals today ahead of a big weekend. The King did leave the palace briefly today for a walkthrough at Westminster Abbey, final preparations. Meanwhile, the Prince and Princess of Wales were in Soho at the pub The Dog and Duck, where the Duke pulled a pint of Kingmaker, suitably named, for the weekend's events. And here tonight, we're going to look ahead to the ceremony. We have the perfect panel for that this evening. Royal biographer Robert Harmon, author of The Queen of Our Times. He's made many a film on the royal family, is with us, and he will be part of our coverage on Saturday. And also, Christine Ross is here, who presents the royal podcast, Royal It As, and she too will be with us on Saturday. Lovely to see you both. Christine, are you getting a feel from Cambridge of how things are building up here in central London? We're going to talk to Christine and Robert a lot more through the course of the programme. Let's join Catty Kay there, who is at Westminster Abbey. I was looking today, Catty, at the plans for the armed services, much of which we can't reveal until Saturday. But I think, without giving much away, the timings that they will be following, it is very, very precise, and they have to be back here at around 2:30 for the flyby over Buckingham Palace. So everybody needs to follow the steps quite correctly if we're going to get there on time.
Yeah, but I have absolutely no doubt they're going to manage, because I looked at those timings too. And by the way, the timings for the whole coronation service echo the timings for 1953 and Queen Elizabeth II's coronation service, the moment the anointing, the moment that the crown is put on King Charles's head. But remember the funeral service, it was pitch perfect. It's as if, ballet choreographers had come in and made sure that everyone moved exactly at the right time, and there are thousands of people involved. So imagine the planning, the preparation, the rehearsals that have to take place, but they pulled it off immaculately for the funeral. I mean, really not a member of the armed services, not a member of a single procession seemed to be out of step. I'm sure it's something that the Royal Ballet would love to be able to emulate. But I'm sure that TikTok will be the TikTok we actually get on Saturday.
You've been looking at some of the regalia, the ancient regalia that we will see, including 3 crowns on Saturday. What stands out to you, apart from the diamonds, of course?
I think it is that the regalia, in a way, those crowns are at the heart of what you've been talking about. They are this sense of ancientness, and they are the sort of visual embodiment. The fact that the crown, the Queen Mary's crown, has to be sized down for Queen Camilla. I mean, even that, you know, it's not like they made a new crown for her. They deliberately wanted to take Queen Mary's crown, use the thing that was ancient, and then size it down for the current queen. I think it's the details like that. Crowns, by the way, it was interesting hearing your guest earlier on in the programme, or in the last hour, talking about how tiaras are going to be, you know, de rigueur at one of the balls. I'm not sure how many people own tiaras. I don't happen to own one. I did try one on, they're very uncomfortable. But of course, you know, they're not comfortable, these crowns to wear, and one of them is so heavy that they only use it for the actual portion of the ceremony when King Charles is being made king, for the actual coronation bit. He's not going to wear it into the church and out of the abbey, because it's going to be too heavy for him to wear. The crowns are going to, you know, no one else is, all the things that are around them, the fact that they're shut up in the Tower of London, the fact that only 3 people are allowed to touch them, it gets back to what you were talking about, these traditions, this history, which might seem like something out of a movie, might seem fictional to other people around the world, but are very much part of Britain's history.
We're breaking all sorts of news tonight. The news that Catty does not own a tiara. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
We'll be back with Catty very shortly.
Christian
Let's
never
speak to
gave
someone
me
who spent...
one.
On my salary. Let's speak to someone who was working very closely with the late Queen Elizabeth, former Buckingham Palace Press Secretary Charles Anson, who is with us. Can we have a shout out, first of all, to the Royal School of Needlework, who I've been following very closely on Twitter the last few days. They've been so busy because, of course, all the insignia has to be changed. The royal standards have to be changed. The chairs have to be changed. It's an enormous job.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to Christine Ross very shortly, but I need to go straight to Washington because the Attorney General Merrick Garland is giving us some thoughts on the verdict today. Those 4 members of the Proud Boys convicted of seditious conspiracy. Let's listen in.
It's clear that the Justice Department will do everything in its power to defend the American people and American democracy. Since the January 6th attack,
Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, giving his thoughts on the conviction today of 4 members of the Proud Boys on seditious conspiracy. Not a charge that is ever really brought in the courts in America. It's tantamount to treason. And of course, probably the most serious charges that have been brought thus far in relation to the assault on the Capitol on January 6th. In a very different mood, let's go to a coronation of a different type in Italy. We are watching very closely a match in Italy tonight between Napoli and Udinese, and Napoli are on the verge of winning the Scudetto, the Serie A championship. You can see the fans watching the big screens there in the centre of Napoli, and I can tell you that in 10 minutes time there is going to be, if the score stays the same, it is 1-1 at the moment, and they just need a point to clinch the title. There is going to be one almighty party down there in Naples this evening. There's about 8 or 9 minutes plus added time to run in that game. Maybe we'll bring you a flavour of that as and when we get a result. But let's focus on the coronation here for a moment. Our panellists, Robert Harmon and Christine Ross, have been guiding us through the events. I want to talk, Christine, if we could, about the lesser royals, for want of a better term. The focus will be on them over the next few days, and particularly the Princess Royal, who I think people warmed to around the time of the late Queen's funeral for the stoic role that she played throughout it. And she plays a very prominent role this weekend. She is gold stick. Tell us about that. Yeah, well, it is an invidious position for the police to be in, because it won't just be protests against the monarchy. There will be climate protesters who will want to take opportunity. And then remember, because there are so many heads of state here, it might not be protests that are linked to this country. It might be protests to do with other countries. So not an easy position for the police to take up on Saturday, as they try to respect both sides of the argument. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
Yorkshire traditions, the hills, the ramblers, and now apparently the alpacas?
We started off with just a load of rescue animals, and then one day I saw a couple of alpacas for sale on Facebook that had done trekking before, and thought, wow, we're in the best location for it, so why not have a go, see what happens.
Making up the two-legged contingent of this caravan across Baildon Moor, students from Bradford College.
It's fun, it's a nice exercise and it's a good experience.
Yes, I was nervous because I wasn't around alpacas, but now that I've got used to him, he's lovely.
The family firm who run the walks also take the animals into care homes. It's not hard to see why. The alpacas are instantly friendly company. It was only an hour's stroll, but that was plenty of time for these students, some of whom have their own challenges to face, making memories to last a lifetime.
You're watching BBC News. Now, sticking with music, not the coronation this time, some news has broken in the past few hours. A US court has ruled that the singer Ed Sheeran did not copy Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On when composing Thinking Out Loud. The British musician had denied stealing elements of the song for his 2014 worldwide hit. As of Gaye's co-writer argued that Sheeran, Warner Music Group and Sony Music Publishing owed them money for copyright infringement. Now, Shearer's legal team had argued that the melodies are different and the elements used in both songs are common in all pop music. Joining me now to discuss is media and entertainment lawyer Nick Eziofulla. Thank you very much for being with us. The point he's making is the chords, the melody, it was all his, and if you want to control chords, that's tantamount to trying to control colours. You should be able to use whatever chords you want. Nick Eziofulla, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us this evening. Important case, one that we've been following quite closely in recent weeks. So let's finish off our coverage of the coronation and our look ahead to the coronation. Actually, while I say that, I think there's a member of the royal family just left the palace. There are the royal outriders heading off down the mall. Can't actually see who is in that car, but it is a vehicle that belongs to the royal household. Heading towards Caddy Kay, who is down at the Abbey for us this evening. So how's the first day of your royal coverage been, Catty? Has it whet your appetite?
Yeah, I've loved it. I've been amazed by all the people camping on the Mall. My American producer was completely bemused by the fact that people would decide and choose to camp out on a hard pavement for a few days just to watch somebody go past in a carriage. So I've been explaining a lot of things to him, including what bunting is. Aidan didn't know what bunting is. So we've been introducing my young American friend to all the traditions here. No, it's great. And there are going to be, of course, Jill Biden has now left. She's on her way here. John Kerry also on his way here. Very few invites went out for this, but John Kerry got one. I had lunch with him last week and he asked me what he should wear, getting fashion tips from me. I know, Christian, you'll think that was a bit of a stretch, and wondered whether he should be wearing a morning suit or just a suit. I said go for the morning coat.
John Kerry, royal families. She comes all the way from the United States and she's still not made the half a mile up here to Canada Gate to see me, but I'll see her on Saturday. My thanks this evening to Robert Hardman.
You're meant to come to the visitor.
And Caroline Ross, who talked me through the preparations this evening. We will be back same time tomorrow. Hope you'll join us for that. Good night.
Hi there, good evening. I'm Chetan Partik with your latest sports news. We start in the Premier League. One game tonight which looks like it's going to finish goalless between Brighton and Manchester United. Much means goalless 95 minutes play between Brighton and Manchester United. Follow the conclusion of that on the BBC Sport website. But that is all your sport from me for now. Good night.
Hello there. We've seen some warm, hazy sunshine today. We've also seen